Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. So I'm excited. I finally got my Yusef Lateef Eastern Sounds Craft One Step, so I can now do a sound quality shootout. So today I'm going to basically talk about two versions of it. The first one is going to be the most recent OJC or Original Jazz Classics reissue. That is out here. I'll show you the inside, the cover, I should say the inside. The actual record itself has the old school yellow and black Prestige label, as you can see, as I prepare to drop it. Don't want to do that, but there you go. And basically, also, the one you would probably most like to see, because you probably care more about that one, is the One Step. So here it is. Not that numbers matter too much, but kind of the cool thing about this is I got number 143, which is fun. I kind of like the packaging. I'm kind of torn on the packaging itself. You know, I don't know if it's quite as fancy, if you will, as the other higher end, you know, the UHQR and the MoFi One Steps. But, you know, it's still pretty cool. You know, it's got a nice thick cardboard outer jacket, and then it's got a little pull tab, which is kind of cool. That when you do that, the record comes out and all the stuff that's inside. And basically, you get a sheet that, you know, shows you, has some essays on the inside and some pictures of the master tape. And also kind of describes their process a little bit on the back here, and another picture of the master tape. So a little bit of a note on the process on this one, because I think it's a little bit different than the John Coltrane Lush Life One Step that came up previously. This one was cut by Bernie Grundman. I thought that the Lush Life one was cut by Kevin Gray, but I could be wrong. But basically, this one was cut by Bernie Grundman and then pressed like the other one was at RTI using the same or similar process as the Mobile Fidelity One Steps. So that's kind of a fun little added extra. The actual album cover is a little bit different, though. It's, I know after reading the internals that it originally was released on a kind of a sister label of Prestige they created called Moodsville. So this reflects that. So it says it has the Moodsville logo on it. And it has what appears to be, what I would assume to be, because I've never seen an original pressing, but it has what appears to be, blow off some of the dust there that got on there somehow, or hair, the original label, as you can see. And one thing I will show as well is it does use, as you can probably see, you can kind of, it's somewhat transparent. That is basically the same, or supposed to be the same formula as the MoFi One Steps. Question is, does it sound as good as the original MoFi One Steps? So that's what we'll talk about. First, I want to talk about, I'll talk about first the OJC pressing, the current reissue that's easy to come by now. It's in the, you know, $25-ish price range, I think. When I first put it on and played through it, I was really impressed because it sounds really good. It's got a great sound stage. It was relatively quiet, a relatively quiet pressing actually. I was not expecting it to be as quiet as it was, really. And you know, overall sound and tone were pretty well balanced. If I had to nitpick, I would say that the bass was a little bit boomy, but that also could just be my room, because I know it's got some boominess in some of the mid bass range, and I have a hard time getting rid of that. So But overall, I would say, a good clarity to it, a good soundstage, not outrageously wide. It actually was somewhat narrow, but in a good way too, because it still went, my speaker still kind of disappeared with the pressing. I could definitely place all the instruments really well in their respective areas, and the overall tone and sound quality were really good. So then I put on the One Step, and I will say that once I put that on, and it was immediate that the soundstage was much wider. It went beyond the speakers from a width perspective, and probably was similar depth, but maybe a little bit deeper. But the interesting thing about that is it still became a deeper soundstage, because the stuff that was, left and right to me were a little bit more forward than they were on the OJC pressing. And then the stuff that's in the center was kind of in the similar area. But the thing that I think stuck out the most for me, and I was trying to figure out the best way for me to describe it, is there just seemed to be, for lack of a better term to describe it, because I don't like the term, but I don't know of a better way to describe it, it had a more 3D or more air to the recording. The reverb, that sounds like it was added reverb to the recording, really was more pronounced and gave you kind of more of a spatial airness around the instruments, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's most apparent on the piano and on the cymbals, especially in the drums, where the cymbals just seem to just explode, if you will, off of the recording, more so than on the OJC pressing. So if I had to make a gripe, there's two gripes that I have. One is one that's sort of disheartening, and that was on the Pum Bossum, which is the first track, which has a flute in the right channel. I got, for lack of a better way for me to describe it, and maybe some of you know the technical term for it, but it sounded almost like a feedback distortion of that flute in the left channel every once in a while. And I wasn't getting that on the OJC pressing, so that was kind of disappointing. So I don't know if that was just because of how it was cut, or if it was a different source for the recording. I mean, I'm guessing that the OJC is cut from a digital transfer, but I don't know if the digital transfer that they made was from the same tapes that they used for this One Step. But it was definitely apparent that you got that a little bit of feedback distortion in the left channel every once in a while when that flute played on the first track. The other thing that I would say, nitpicking at best, is that it wasn't, or it didn't seem as though it was as quiet as the Mobile Fidelity One Steps. Now, that could potentially be just because it is a 33, and because of that, I believe that they cut it a little softer than what Mobile Fidelity typically does, because they're 45 RPM. So that might have some explanation for that. But I would say when it comes to the surface noise, I would say both of them were pretty much the same. I didn't hear much of an improvement on the surface noise issue on the Craft One Step in comparison to the OJC reissue. So I would still say overall it's pretty apparent that the One Step is definitely a marked improvement that I think you would notice on a good system. When playing it and listening to it in the sweet spot, you will definitely pick up on the differences. And maybe even just moderate systems, or just a decent system where you're kind of sitting at or near the sweet spot, you should hear a difference with these. And it, like I said, is most apparent in the cymbals and the piano. They just kind of had that 3D spatialness to them on the Craft One Step that I just didn't get on the OJC. Now, the OJC still had great soundstage, like you could place where the instruments were, but they didn't seem to have that 3D or airiness to them that the One Step did. So that's kind of my take. I would say that if you could potentially get your hands on the One Step, it's definitely going to be an improvement over the reissue. OJC reissue. I would really love to be able to hear a original pressing or early pressing. My guess is I would probably come to the same conclusion, just from my experience, but I could be wrong. I would love to hear your take if you've got an original pressing and the Craft One Step, and you were able to compare them, because I'd be curious to see what that is. But if we're talking just the OJC reissue that's currently available, like at Amazon and probably your local record store and things, and then the Craft One Step. The Craft One Step, besides that one issue on the Plum Blossom, it is clearly a superior pressing and cut of the album. So, love to hear what you have to say if you have the One Step, or if you have, for example, if you're one of the lucky ones that has an early pressing or first pressing and the OJC reissue. I would love to hear your take on it and see, if there's a big difference between those two. I would venture to say that there might not be, because that OJC sounds really, really good. It's just, once you put on that One Step, it was apparent that it was quite different. And, some of that might be the One Step process. Some of it might be just Bernie Grundman's equipment that he uses to cut, or a combination of the two. So that's my take. Please like this video if you liked it. If you want to comment below, please comment below. I would love to hear your comments and hear your feedback. And if you would please subscribe to my channel. And if you want to know when my new videos come out, please hit that alert bell. Thank you very much, and you have a good day.